The vision calls for the nation to be a self-sufficient, industrialized nation by 2020, encompassing all aspects of life, from economic prosperity, social well-being, educational world class, political stability, as well as psychological balance.
Di kuartal ketiga
And
aja
whatever
Malaysia
it is,
naik
it's undeniable.
signifikan gitu guys.
Malaysia has undergone a
Ekonominya.
tremendous transformation over the past 30 years. Malaysians are very peaceful and warm and supportive of each other. And it's the smiles and the warmth of the people of Malaysia that makes Malaysia truly Asia.
Assalamualaikum, Elsa di sini. Hai guys, hai semua, halo tetangga, gimana kabar teman-teman semua? Semoga sehat selalu, semoga bahagia selalu, dan semoga hari-hari selalu good day. Selamat datang di channel YouTube Malaysia Widianti Putri. Hari ini aku akan reaction salah satu video dari channel Andreas Don. Mungkin aku bisa katakan bahwa 30 tahun dia hidup, dia merasakan penuh dengan cinta ketika dia di Malaysia. Kalau nggak salah ini dia di Malaysia itu sejak tahun 1993. Bisa dibilang Malaysia itu menjadi rumah kedua mungkin bagi dia, second home untuk dia merasakan perjalanan hidup, cinta, karir di Malaysia. Jadi nanti akan kita lihat sama-sama videonya seperti apa dan seperti apa perjalanan dari Andreas Don ini guys. Langsung aja di subscribe guys channelnya. Tapi sebelum dimulai video reactionnya, seperti biasa aku mau ngajakin teman-teman semua dulu untuk subscribe channel ini dan aktifkan lonceng notifikasinya supaya tidak ketinggalan update terbaru dari channel ini. Dan bagi teman-teman yang mau request bisa banget DM di Instagram aku di @elsawidiantiputri. Yaudah tanpa berlama-lama tanpa membuang masa, jumlah kita mulai video reactionnya. Are you ready? Let's go.
1993, the year I came to Malaysia. It's been 30 years
Kayak mana ya,
since I
93
came
itu
to this
waktu
beautiful
itu Malaysia
country.
itu.
And this is a video about how Malaysia welcomed me and I made Malaysia my home. I had a job in Malaysia with the United Nations at the Prime
Dia
Minister's
bekerja di
Department,
Malaysia.
working with the EPU.
Oh,
I knew
dia
very
jadi
little
bekerja di Malaysia waktu itu sebagai menjabat di jabatan Perdana Menteri guys. Jadi di pemerintahan dia bekerja.
about Malaysia before I came here. Of course, I had a briefing in New York, and before I accepted the job, I was still in Germany, so I talked to some people, professors of mine that I knew from university, who I knew they researched about Asia Pacific, and talked to some friends who were traveling through the region. They only knew Thailand and Singapore, because hey, who knew Malaysia way back in 1993? So I came here. I arrived at Subang International Airport. Yay! Subang International Airport.
Subang.
Do you still remember Subang International Airport?
Subang.
If you do, just type it into the comment box right now. Because there was no KLIA at that point of time. And
Oh, jadi
because
sekarang
I
jadi
traveled all around the world already,
KLIA.
I somehow thought like Malaysian airports or the Malaysian airport will be exactly like other airports I've expected in other parts, in other continents of the world. Chaotic and overwhelming. Nothing like that. When I arrived, the entry to Malaysia was smooth. Yeah, there was an incident when I traveled to my first hotel. I stayed in a hotel first. That's a topic for another video. Now I worked the Prime Minister's Department in downtown KL. And that was
masih
something
bekerja di
that
KL
really
dia, guys.
transpired.
Oh jadi dia sampai sedetik ini masih tinggal di Malaysia gitu. Gitu ya? 30 tahun guys.
While I was working there was a buzz in the air. A certain buzz, a certain climate, a certain
Kok bisa lama ya dia bisa
atmosphere
tinggal di Malaysia
in
gitu?
Malaysia. A hustle and a bustle about things to come. You see, Malaysia in that time was one of the Asian tigers. Do you remember the expression Asian tigers? Countries in Asia Pacific who were at the trajectory towards tremendous growth to reach economic heights. And Malaysia was one of them. And it felt like Malaysia was unbeatable, making its mark on global stages economically. The battle cry, Malaysia Boleh. Do you remember that one? It was all
Malaysia
around,
Boleh,
even
tagline
nowadays, so
Malaysia.
deeply imprinted in the Malaysian psyche. Whenever I use it in one of my trainings and I say Malaysia, so many of my participants respond back, Boleh. It's so deeply imprinted, and that was the feeling in Malaysia, we can become somebody in this world. There was, as I mentioned, a huge potential for growth in the country. And the vision was Wawasan 2020. Malaysia to become a developed nation by 2020. Yeah. I do know it might have fallen aside a little bit over the past few years. But aside from this one, it was a combining vision, combining all Malaysians. So I checked out in Wikipedia about the definition for Wawasan 2020, and I want to quote this here right now. Wawasan 2020. The vision calls for the nation to be a self-sufficient, industrialized nation by 2020, encompassing all aspects of life, from economic prosperity, social well-being, educational world-class, political stability, as well as psychological
Di
balance.
kuartal
And
ketiga aja
whatever it
Malaysia
is,
naik
it's undeniable.
signifikan gitu guys.
Malaysia has undergone a tremendous transformation over the past 30 years. And it's truly amazing to see how far it has come. See, the city development, the urban development of Malaysia, it's huge. Kuala Lumpur,
Kuala Lumpur,
Georgetown in Penang, Johor Bahru, Kuantan in Pahang, Kuching, Kota Kinabalu, not to forget those beautiful jewels. And too many cities to
Kinabalu.
mention here is really a massive development. 2 new cities were developed over the past 30 years, and I think it's only 2, Cyberjaya and Putrajaya, outside of Kuala Lumpur, but at the fringes somewhere there. Huge in its architectural development and aspiration. Kuala Lumpur and all the other major cities are imprinted by towering office buildings, by huge residential apartment blocks, condominiums, beautiful in its architecture, amazing and wonderful to watch. Let's talk about shopping malls. Hey, Malaysia is a shopping paradise. Kuala Lumpur is a shopping paradise as a city, and so many tourists come here to go for shopping. Now, when I came in 1993, let me see what I remember. I was adopted by some friends and we hung out in malls like
dijadikan
Lot
anak
10,
angkat
Sungai
waktu di
Wan,
Malaysia guys tuh.
Sogo. All these malls, I think, are still existing in a different shape and size. That time very different. Bangsa Shopping Center in its original form, way smaller than it is today. Bangsa Village already existed at that time. There was no such thing as KLCC, Pavilion Malls, Sunway, and One More Tama. I think it was just getting started in its development around that time or a few years later. It's amazing, isn't it? I don't know how many malls there are nowadays in Kuala Lumpur, but it's wow, huge, and it's a hot spot for the Malaysian population over the weekend times to go shopping, to celebrate the festivities existing in Malaysia, and for tourists to do their shopping. Let's talk some more of what was there. The infrastructure has improved. So many new roads have been built, so many highways, flyovers or above flyovers, an architectural feast to watch. And the little roads that are built to beat traffic jams, sometimes in really funny curves, but it's all about beating the traffic jams. So that's really an amazing development as well to achieve that transformation in Malaysia. Was completed at that time when I was there. Imagine the time before the North-South Highway was completed. Nowadays, clogged with traffic during Chinese New Year or Hari Raya or other festivals. But at that time, before its completion, when there was normal roads, imagine all the traffic today would be on those normal roads. Nothing would move
Betul,
anymore.
sekarang kan
And
udah
of
banyak
course,
orang-orang
we
jadi
got
jam di
public
mana-mana
transport,
gitu.
LRT, MRT, and yeah,
Berbeda
I do
dengan
know
tahun
they are
tahun
breaking
93.
down every now and then, and commuters get stranded at different stations, and it's a pity, of course. But 1993, 1995, there were buses, remember the mini buses all across town, bringing
ini ya,
passengers from
bus
station to
dulu.
station, the conductors hanging out from the doors, shouting the different stations they would go to
Unik
before they
banget.
reach their final destination, sometimes stopping in the middle of the roads, rushing the passengers to come on board, rushing passengers to go off board. How dangerous it was. are still a very unique feature of the Malaysian life at that point of time. I mentioned Subang International Airport earlier, but imagine KLIA was not existing in 1993, 1995. Even KLIA 2 only opened, I think, in 2014. It's a beautiful airport, but before it existed, it was Subang International Airport. And that was quite an interesting and much smaller airport. KLIA nowadays, of course, carries a lot of traffic. I couldn't imagine Subang International Airport to carry the same load. That would be like, whoa, I couldn't imagine. So that was also some foresight to plan that airport. Of course, population has grown dramatically over the last 30 years. Urbanization is huge. And nowadays you see many Matsalis, foreigners, running around in cities like in Penang or in cities like Kuala Lumpur. When I reached Malaysia in 1993, I don't think there were that many. Yeah, there were some, of course, I remember, but there were not that many, and I remember always being stared at when I walked around in Bangsa. And people were not that used to see foreigners walking around, seeing us walking around, and we were stared at. It was quite interesting. Nowadays, it won't happen that much anymore, if at all. Now let's talk about nightlife as well. I don't talk too much about nightlife. It's beyond my time. I'm maybe too old nowadays. Maybe it's a different video altogether. But every little area in Kuala Lumpur got its own nightlife hotspots. At that time, when I arrived, for example, in Bangsa, there was nothing going on in Bangsa. Nowadays, today, when you go to Bangsa at night, whoa, full of pubs and clubs and restaurants. Beautiful. At that time, I think there were 2 clubs. One was called Rogers Pub. Not sure if it still exists actually. I was one of the 2 clubs existing or pubs existing in Bangsa. Nothing else. And of course, best comes at last. One is the people and one is, of course, the food. One of the main things that makes Malaysia so attractive is the diversity of its people. The population is made up mainly of Malays, Chinese, Indians, and the indigenous communities. And each group brings its own unique culture, its own unique festivals, its own unique food, its own unique traditions, and this makes for a vibrant and colorful society. And it's one of the things that made me fall in love with Malaysia way back in 1993. And I was fortunate enough to be adopted by a group of people who comprises all groups. And we were hanging out together, celebrating each other's festivals, learning from each other, and just having tremendous fun. The country really is a melting pot of religion, of cultures, of languages, and that makes it so incredibly unique. And this diversity is celebrated throughout the years in different festivals and religious ceremonies like Hari Raya, Chinese New Year, Deepavali, or Gawai Dayak. And it's showcasing the togetherness of the people. Malaysians are very peaceful and warm and supportive of each other. And it's the smiles and the warmth of the people of Malaysia that makes Malaysia truly Asia. Malaysian food, oh man, I promise you, Malaysian food is the best in the world.
Apakah kalian mendengarkan, guys? Dia bilang apa tadi? Kita ulang ya.
Oh man, I promise you, Malaysian food is the best in the world. No video about Malaysia should leave Malaysian food out. So the first video that I created about my arrival in Malaysia contains so much information about food already anyway. But hey, that is 1993. At that time I had no idea about Malaysian food. I loved Asian food. Well, I loved Asian food that was served in Frankfurt, but I had no idea what would expect me here in Malaysia when I arrived, and the beauty of food, the delicious food, and this will be part of the next video. I'm really grateful for the life that I developed here in Malaysia, that I'm here with my wife, I have a son. And over the next couple of videos, I'm inviting you to follow me because I'm going to share some warm memories from different locations that imprinted inside of me and what happened at that situations. Because as I started thinking about creating this video, so many memories just bubbled up. I just live to be here. Until then, jumpa lagi. Bye-bye. Terima kasih.
Wah, luar biasa banget. Ini adalah pengalaman yang aku bisa katakan pengalaman luar biasa dari Andreas Dorn. Itulah pengalaman dia selama 30 tahun. Dia mendapatkan cinta, mendapatkan perjalanan kisah, journey dia, perjalanan dia di Malaysia. Malaysia zaman 93 dengan Malaysia yang sekarang itu jauh berbeda, jauh lebih berkembang, jauh lebih bagus, lebih baik, lebih maju. Betul. Mengelilingi Malaysia gitu, karena pastinya di setiap negeri-negeri yang ada di Malaysia itu mempunyai ciri khas, mempunyai keunikan, yang mempunyai keindahan, mempunyai hal yang bisa dieksplor gitu. Jadi buat teman-teman, jomlah ke Malaysia. Yuk, gas. Iya. Kayak cukup sekian video reaction kali ini. Bagi teman-teman yang suka sama video ini, jangan lupa untuk like, comment, dan subscribe. Dan kita ketemu di next video. Bye bye. Assalamualaikum.